what do you get when you cross a know-it-all newspaper columnist with an awkward, unsophisticated everyman?
Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure about that right now.
Welcome to Couch and the Rube.
Welcome into Couch in the Rube, presented as always by our friends at Skymint Premium Cannabis. Inspiring people to do better, feel better, love better, live better, especially feel better right now. Not a bad time for Skymint. And our Friday morning show, Odd Time, brought to you by another comfort sponsor, Muskox High Quality Flannels. Good weekend to be wrapped up in a Muskox flannel and watching some hoops and just thinking about stuff, you know? So, Jason?
Yeah, man.
Good to be back. How you doing, man?
Not bad. It's kind of Tim Stout-esque to say this, but yeah, I was leaning on some of the sponsors since we've been off, man. Definitely some Skymint for sure to try to alleviate the mood, but it's good to be back doing a show.
It is. And, you know, this is a weird week, and it was like, when is it right to come back? And I know the thing that's interesting is the day by day, what people are feeling changes and what's appropriate changes. Yep. And, you know, I think back to 9/11, and obviously different, not comparing levels of awful. One was a national
we know what you mean.
Terror. Yeah, one was this terror was local. But what I mean by that is Tuesday morning, 9/11, and through a couple days, everything, it was all consuming. And the NFL canceled quickly. College football followed suit. And they had to for a lot of reasons. And logistics, the planes weren't in the air or anything. High schools, at least in this state, played on. And I remember going to the Lansing-Sexton Grand Ledge game out in Grand Ledge. I was home that week with my dad. And by Friday night, it felt okay to play that game. And it felt warm and needed and great to be a part of that community. But you wouldn't have thought that 2 days earlier or even a day earlier. And I think that's one of the hardest things about when do you start talking sports again, and when does it feel like, you know, there are still people fighting for their lives in a hospital a few blocks from here, in our downtown studio. So, what is right and what isn't. So, especially with our kind of show, and it's kind of hard when we have, you know, Hans Jurgen takes or something like that to kind of. And to Hans's credit, Hans, you know, I mean, what's great is Hans's takes today are really good. And what we wanted to do today was sort of, you know, wherever you are, meet you where you are. And we're happy to talk hoops, and we're going to talk a little hoops before we get into your questions and takes and other things. And since that's, you know, it's kind of a listener-driven show, we kind of just wanted to see what the listeners felt like talking about. So why not try a little something, you know? It's not moving on. It's just kind of what can you do to try to distract yourself at least a little bit during a part of a day? Yeah, give you voice, let you guys direct the chat a little bit. We'll start before we get into all that, a little bit of so a little time peg, what the time frame for us. The last show we were about to do was a Monday night hot take show. Those hot takes will probably just never be seen. Although I will say this, some of you had some really great hot takes Monday. And if they're still apt Sunday night or whenever, reintroduce them. But I'm not going to go, you know, we're not going to hold on to them. But we were, you know, I think we were lucky we didn't do a show. And we were lucky that we were a little behind. I had wound up having a conversation in Tom Izzo's office that night for a couple different stories I was working on, although those have been slightly delayed. And I was in there for like 45, 50 minutes before he had to go to his radio show. And so I was behind putting together the hot takes. And, you know, we had no idea that less than an hour from then things were going to happen. The shooting was going to happen on campus. But because of that, by the time we got to the studio, we knew things were happening. And we were able to kind of confirm it and figure it out and knew it wasn't appropriate to do a show. And I'm grateful we didn't. Because sometimes we don't even pay attention to the outside world while we're doing this show. Like sometimes you'll tweet at us, and I won't even see it till the end. And it would have really sucked to do like 2 hours. And with the Okemos thing happening, like I think a week prior, I just thought, you know, because you texted me, said shooting at MSU, and then you came down here, and I just figured I was just expecting it to be a hoax.
and then it got more serious, and then we're looking at each other going like, okay, I guess we should probably go home and regroup and
wrap this up.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed your column the next day because I know that you were, as we were standing outside, Graham was like, I guess, I should go down there, and a lot of, new employees at LSJ. I mean, no one knew what was going to happen that night. And the people, the guys on Channel 10 and the local news, I felt so bad for them because you're just regular, for a regular night of doing some news, and then you're on that. So it was just impressive all the way around. Listening to the scanner when I got home with Treese and the 911 operators, everybody just from top to bottom was just unbelievable. And driving past Graham, like as I left here and going 127 north and passing that Grand River and watching police cars head my way, I have respect for police officers, but in my head, I go, there's no way I could head into that. Because after the fact, we know more of the facts now, but at that time, we had no idea what was transpiring on campus. There was, reports of a lot of things happening on everywhere. I just couldn't imagine driving into that. So from top to bottom, from everyone, it was just impressive to see people react like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the students were impressive too. One thing that's interesting about the students is, and Izzo got into this a little bit about the shelter in place, how impressed he was. I think he doesn't think young people can follow directions, and so he was amazed. But, kids, unfortunately, today grow up with these drills, and so we didn't deal with this at all when we were in school. I mean, Columbine happened 2 years after both of us graduated, and so there were no, we just didn't have this.
I think we had like earthquake stuff or something where I just remember having to be under a desk for something.
Yeah,
I think it was earthquakes.
We had things, but we didn't deal with this stuff.
No.
It wasn't. And so, but these kids all get it, and they snap into understanding and how to barricade themselves in and get through it. And so the night was interesting. I figured I was probably going to be needed. We got a fairly young staff, some of which have done a great job this, including a couple of our youngest people who are still sort of affiliated with MSU, and that's been advantageous for us. And they've,
but that's a part of it, though, just kind of being thrown in it sometimes and learning on the fly.
And that night, I know they were nervous. I know, one of their parents didn't want them to go over there, which I get. The thing is, this is sort of the job, and my wife wasn't thrilled that I was going out there and was still technically an active shooter. And I'm not an idiot. I'm not like trying to sneak into a building. I'm not. But what I was trying to do when I got over there was, first of all, it was an unbelievable scene. I've never been around the campus that quiet, and yet it was just flooded with police lights everywhere. Like you could just hear the humming of cars, the walk signs, all that stuff. It was eerily silent, and I tried to get as far back without alienating the cops in sort of inside the perimeter and get a sense of things, and then to be there when the students were finally able to come out and have some of those initial conversations. And we'll get into some of the stuff some of the coverage stuff. There's some questions about, how some national media has talked to students. I think that's a TV problem primarily, but there might be some other issues. There, just how the coverage is overall.
What from
it's insensitive,
hard copy and like the national ones like that, or
people get insensitive. First of all, not if you're not from here and it doesn't feel like your community. And if it does feel like your community and you're from here, you get a little annoyed at people swooping in. You just do. It's like, because you feel like you're a part of this, like you have some ownership toward these stories that we're going to be here long after everybody's gone. But it amazes me some of the lack of tact people have as humans. Like one of the things that felt really good that Friday night is the kids were coming out is I talked to some kids for the column I was writing, but I also just asked like more than half, are you okay? Because every once in a while after I had a conversation, that's just where I needed to be. I just needed to say, are you? And their responses were they were like grateful for it. You realize these are just kids at that point. They were, yeah. And, it didn't matter what a kid looked like. If he looked like a music kid or a frat boy or whatever it was, and you're especially, I talked about in the column, the not run-in's the wrong word, but where the young woman sort of was startled by me and the fear on her face. And so I was very, you're very careful about that. You start off as just saying, are you doing okay? Start a conversation, and then you introduce yourself and you say, hey, would you mind chatting with me? You know, there's a very good way to do it, and it's very easy, and not everybody does it. And it's stupid. And I wish I'd been
you make it sound easier than it really is, though, right? Because, you see kids maybe on their phone with their parents and stuff. And
just be a human, though.
Right.
I mean, don't ask them to overdo too much of the trauma. Don't be too crass. Read the room. It's very easy, and not everybody is. And the problem with television is that a lot of people go into TV just want to be on TV. And they're fucking didn't have the balls to go out to L.A. and be actors, so they went into journalism school, right? And that's what it is. It is. There are only, we have a lot of really good, caring, good TV people around here, young people who I think they've done things the right way, and I've seen some of them do the right way. But there are a lot of people in TV that aren't great, and so that just.
But some of those things are also news directors on top of you telling you to go out.
Doesn't
and
matter.
Get these stories.
Be strong enough.
I understand. I'm just saying I can see both sides.
Yeah. No, and so I get it. And I didn't run into it. I would have sort of spoken up if I'd seen inappropriate behavior that way. I haven't been out there, every day like some people have. So yeah, it was a bizarre night. It began, that day began with me getting up at like 5 a.m. to write a Joey Hauser column. And ended at like 2:30 a.m. with me realizing that if I didn't get 2 hours sleep, there's no way I was going to be able to write something coherent. And odd day. I think we'll have a lot more coverage, obviously, throughout. And it is because we're not going anywhere. I mean, our show is here. The Lansing State Journal is here. Like, as people leave and care less. We're not opportunists. We're here to cover our community and do it in a caring and appropriate way. I do want to talk a little hoops before we get into your Twitter questions and thoughts and things of that nature, because we do have some good hoops questions and good hoops thoughts. But I think a lot of people, when they put these in, again, they weren't feeling quite comfortable going there yet. And so, but there is some good discussion on that. But the game is happening Saturday night at Michigan, and I strangely think it's weird how it worked out. Worked out's a horrible phrase. We fix that in post.
I got you.
But if you're trying to restart in awful circumstances, the schedules with a lot of things made this doable, because the hockey team's on the road. You're not worrying about a packed mud and feeling whatever. Friday night. Let them go play a big series away from home. The women's basketball team is home, and this was the thing that was the last, I think, to be decided, because it's the first real big home event. And was it appropriate? And you want to make sure the people playing in the game feel like they want to be playing the game and all that stuff. But I think women's basketball is almost ideal for a restart in bad circumstances, because it is such a family atmosphere. If you've never been to a women's game there, it is just, there are a lot of families there. It's a cool place. It's not that they don't get frustrated. It's not that they're not passionate. It's not that they're not upset the team's losing, but it's just different. It's hard to explain. And it's a little bit smaller event than a men's game that is just exhausting. It would take a lot out of the staff and community, and it would feel like it took over the campus. If Michigan was playing at Michigan State this weekend, I don't think he could do that. And I think Tuesday night will be enough of an emotional thing with Indiana. And I do think that the women's basketball game works out. It'll be a place, like I talked about that high school football game after 9/11, where people who just want to be back on campus will enjoy congregating again, and will enjoy being around each other. Will enjoy the distraction. Will enjoy. I'm sure they'll honor the victims and the trauma that's happening. And then down at Michigan, it's almost ideal in this sense. One, it's not out of state. It's a place that's still connected to MSU. Lots of people go to Michigan. I mean, this state is just full of people that are connected to one of those two universities. Nobody in their life doesn't have Michigan and Michigan State people. Nobody wasn't affected to some degree. No reasonable, rational, decent human being wasn't affected by this in the sense of empathy. And you're seeing it from Michigan right now. You're seeing, the special shirts they're going to do, playing the alma mater, the Spartan Strong flag in the student section. You see the women's basketball team at Michigan wearing Spartan shirts with hearts on it last night, I believe. Like, just bigger stuff than rivalry. And I also think that this rivalry that needed some toning down This is a good perspective moment. Now, I don't know if it'll last, but I hope it dials things back a little bit, because rivalries should be intense. They should be fierce. You should get frustrated with people. But I do like the showing that we've seen, not only from Michigan, but from, and I know there's some people, we have one Twitter comment that says they've seen some not great things on Twitter. I have seen only the best from.
I've seen both.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
What have you seen that's been bad?
I know someone that's going to the game and is really not into wearing the Spartan Strong shirt.
Okay.
So it's still, the rivalry is still strong. I think the
fine.
game tomorrow night, I think everyone will be cordial, but I think it'll be back to normal by the time football season rolls around.
Sure. It'll take the animosity out of the room tomorrow.
Right.
And you hope that again, sort of the humanity of it begins to be something, because ultimately it's fine to be an intense rivalry. It's fine to have smack talk. That's part of the fun of this.
Right.
You don't want a football game next October where everybody's going, how you doing? Good. What the hell would that? The show would suck. The whole thing would suck. But what you want is just this base understanding that there's a human across the way from you that is no better or no worse than you. Because none of us, media, fans, anybody, has anything to do with what's going on in the field. Your team won. You didn't win. And it's fine to brag on that, but just understand that you didn't do shit. I think that's an important thing that we always have to remember in this rivalry. But I do think that this will be a good day for the rivalry and what's an awful time otherwise. And you wish that it didn't have to be this. You wish that it could be the usual venom in a lot of ways, and this whole thing didn't happen. I do think it'll be an interesting game, because you see these things before. I covered a Northern Illinois Western Michigan game. You can drink if you're drinking. If you're listening to this live, it's early in the morning. Yeah. And in DeKalb, it was after the first event on campus after the shooting at Northern Illinois in 2008 on Valentine's Day. It was like, basically 15 years almost to the day earlier. And tons of media descended on it. I felt bad for the two teams in this sense that finally, national media was watching a MAC basketball game, and the two teams combined to go 3 for 72. It was an exhausting time going into it. There was all this stuff, and the basketball wasn't very good. And you could just see the players had been consumed by it, were tired by it. It just wasn't the right. And that can happen in these games. Maybe it'll be a great game, and I hope it is. I think it'll be close, because neither of these teams has really shown the capability of blowing many teams out, nor have they been blown out very often. I think
Michigan can't rebound either, especially offensively.
Well, Michigan's lost, I think, I counted it, was it 10 games by at least 10 games by 6 points or less. So they're in everything. They just can't finish. They got a young backcourt, and that's why this happens. Michigan State is, in 6 of their last 11 games, have been decided, I think, by 6 points or less, something like that. Whatever it is, I'm blanking on what I.
Sounds about right.
What I wrote, but we'll take it as fact. Anyway, so it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be therapeutic. It'll be fun to watch again. I think people are ready for hoops, and that sucks. And that's sort of what I wrote about today, is the idea that this is when it feels most callous, is when we're not even a week out. We're not even a work week out. At this time on Monday, there were 8 people whose lives were very different. There was a campus that felt very different, and you begin to move on with routine, and it's almost and those lives don't, and that's a weird.
But you also need something to distract you from,
And in athletes,
for a couple hours out of the day.
Totally. And the athletes, what are they going to do? Twiddle their thumbs all weekend? I mean, they've sort of said this is what they know how to do. It's play a basketball game. It's honor their campus. I totally get it from that perspective. And if you're not ready for it and you don't think it's appropriate, you don't have to take part. I think it's okay wherever your head is. I don't think there's any issue there. Before we dig into these takes, questions, thoughts presented by our friends at Groovy Donuts, I do want to remind you that this Tuesday is Fat Tuesday at Groovy Donuts. This is their busiest day of the year. Pre-orders close Sunday at midnight to get your Fat Tuesday pre-orders in. They're open starting today through Fat Tuesday, although Monday is pre-order pickups only, and just at the East Lansing location. But Groovy Donuts is open. Their hours are different than their normal hours, And
is it like the Super Bowl for the donut world?
This is big.
I'm not a big Punchki guy.
I'm not, although
right?
some of I was looking at some of the pictures, like the apricot Punchki. I may have to get in on.
Oh, I'm good for one. But yeah.
Yeah, no, this is huge. Like, I'm amazed. Like, me, I understand National Donut Day. I'm all in. But Punchki Day, Fat Tuesday, partly, I think part of it happens because at this point in my life, I'm trying not to celebrate my fatness. And it's just the name of the day. So I think that's...
you're at the point in your life where you have to decide whether you want to celebrate it or do something about it.
Right. And that may be
where we're at.
And then I usually give up Brussels sprouts and throwing stones at whales for Lent or something like that, something non-sincere and whatever. It's not...
Throwing stones at whales?
I don't know.
Washed up on shore?
I'm just saying. I just remember growing up, like, never giving up anything sincere for Lent. It was like my mom would come out with, like, Brussels sprouts, and I'd be like, no, can't do it. Lent, it's not going to, it's not...
My dad would give up drinking, and then we'd find him in his RV drinking beer. So
not,
I don't know if
not all that
takes it seriously.
Well, you go to groovydonuts.com to place those pre-orders. Again, Groovy Donuts, 2 locations on Lake Lansing Road in East Lansing and also in Williamston. And, if you're looking for, look, it's cold as hell tonight and all that. If you're looking for a something to feel warm in and something to feel cozy and comfortable in, we highly recommend Muskox high-quality flannels. Go to gomuskox.com, and you can always use the Couch on the Roof promo code CAW15 for $15 off. They've got some great stuff, too, in terms of their fabrics as it transitions to a warmer times, too, so good spring flannels. Again, gomuskox.com. Do you want to start to dig into these thoughts and takes and everything from listeners?
Yeah, let's do it. Eric Schultz up first. I've got so many amazing memories of my time at MSU, but among my favorites were the times I'd leave my apartment late at night and walk campus by myself. Just me, my footsteps, and my campus. I was home. I felt safe. I feel terrible for the thousands who can't feel that way anymore.
Yeah, it sucks. And I don't know how, for the kids who are there, it'll linger. I don't know how long it'll feel that, one of the stories I am going to do, and I don't know who else listens, but I am curious about the long-term effects, and there are other places that have had this, and sort of how long did it feel certain ways? How did security change? How did the campus change? What years later, how do you honor people? What feels different? Does somebody who was 5 years old when it happened notice it on campus 20 years later? But for the students who are there now, it will affect them, and especially the ones who were sort of in the epicenter.
And I wondered how many parents would just, they take their kids off campus.
There were a lot of parents there Monday night starting to show up that were just really ready to get their kids out of there.
I mean, for like good.
Oh, for good. Yeah.
Not just that night. I mean, just, I know my mother, if something were to happen like that back in the day, yeah, she would have been like, first of all, why are you in college? You're dumb. But secondly, I want you off that campus. But yeah, it's unbelievable to think like back in the day, when we were their age, to have to think about shootings like that. Never had to think of anything.
It just didn't happen. We had we had some gangs in Lansing. Remember the Nutty Boys? That was my biggest fear.
No, I never heard of the Nutty Boys.
They had these hats that were pulled down. Yeah, it was a very Lansing thing, and the Nutty Boys were scary.
What was the other Lansing one? I'll never remember it.
I don't know. But
I don't know. The Vice Lords.
Vice Lords and Nutty Boys.
That was at Waverly, yeah. And I was like, who are the Vice Lords?
Yeah, so that was the fear.
Yeah.
The fear back then. Yeah, no, it will be. And, I had conversations with people that night via instant message, people asking for updates who were absolutely terrified, who were young students in nearby apartments next to campus, and people, they knew people in dorms, they knew people in the in Berkey Hall, and they knew people in the Union, and you could just the fear was palpable, and it was.
My sister lives near Lake Lansing Road, which they think he might have walked by.
He tried to go home, from what I understand. Like, it sounds like he basically, near Otto Middle School, where not great for our old Lansing schools, but up near that area, of Lake Lansing and Larch, and he walked like 4 miles back. Yeah.
Dominic next. Number 1, parents shouldn't have to keep going through this stuff constantly. So many people are just evil to the core. Hate this shit, man. 2, Graham is such an incredibly thoughtful writer. Can't say enough about his piece on Tuesday morning. Just perfectly done. Thanks, Graham. 3, don't let this mushy shit go to your head, Couch. Next fucking live line you nearly tweet out, you're right back to my shit list. Respectfully, of course.
Appreciate you, Dominic. And by the way, there are several, and I think I left most of them in that were just saying thanks to us or nice column. And that's okay, but I expect you to give me all sorts of shit when you don't like my takes on Sunday or Monday or whatever. And please.
Oh, that'll be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Please continue to do that.
But it was nice to read your angle from it, because watching this national news kind of stuff and people that couldn't get in there and see some of the students' reactions, it was I really enjoyed it. But
I feel a sense of responsibility to this community. It's our place, right? And I like being in that role. I do. I like being relied upon. And you don't, sometimes in communities this size, you don't get people who are who've been around a while and are comfortable in that. And so that's one of the things I'm glad to be. I'm glad to be, and I'm glad I see some of the we saw it with the some of the stuff that's happened in years past, where national folks come in and you can just tell it's a swoop in. It's they're capitalizing on ratings or whatever, and but we got to live in the shit.
Andrew Gauthier next. Number one, say what you want about Izzo, and I know as we as a fan base have our quibbles with his coaching sometimes, but that man is as a good representative of this university as I could possibly imagine. What an absolutely great dude. Well done to him in his vigil speech. 2, when is it going to be okay to ask my sister-in-law if I can bring my niece and nephew to a ball game here again? Since I was a little kid, I've never felt uncomfortable or unsafe on MSU's campus, especially during my 4 years as a student. It's a goddamn shame that students on campus right now likely won't have that same experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think look at the number of times it's happened. It's once, right? So I think it's safe now to say that. I mean, to ask. Yeah, it's.
And there was 2 students that one experienced the Oxford thing. They went to school there.
Well, so
and then they had to deal with that. It's just,
there's a Sandy Hook student, which is amazing. Who was in Sandy Hook, and you think about the ages, and that adds up. And
it's unbelievable.
And then Oxford, I'm guessing there are quite a few, because Oxford's a pretty large high school that probably sends, I don't know, 50 kids to MSU every year in a graduating class, and so they're freshmen. So I don't, maybe not that many, but yeah, I mean, and then there were some who were, that were nearby who were Oxford grads. Yeah, it's the fact that kids are starting to have to go through this multiple times is ridiculous.
Maybe next. Number 1. No matter how far an alumni goes, we are all grieving with MSU. 2, the 911 dispatcher was nothing short of amazing. And 3, there should be an incel test men have to pass to get a weapon. Bonus. I don't want Spartan stickers on a Michigan helmet. That feels perverse.
I think that's happening with softball or whatever. Yeah, no, look, not everybody feels like they want this. They want to be honored, but not maybe too honored,
Then don't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like doing it or paying attention to it, I guess, right?
Yeah, the 911 dispatcher, though,
which one? We need names, I guess. I heard a bunch.
Well, yeah, and I think there is going to be one of them who's critical to things lives in our neighborhood, and also there's another reporter who I think is going to do a story on her. So, yeah, I mean, look, Dominic does this, this is an important job that when, it has to be done well in critical times a lot, and never
panic.
More than this. Yeah.
I would. Oh, my God.
You miss Beckman.
Oh, Steve. I'm sorry, Steve. Where is he? Oh, Beckman. Number 1, Tom Izzo is the greatest Spartan that any of us will have in our lifetimes, and his spot on the MSU Mount Rushmore, is guaranteed. What should join him and John Hanna on that monument? 2, Monday was a complete anomaly at MSU. We should put ourselves in the shoes of those that were there, empathize, mourn the victims, and be pissed off at a system that allowed it to happen. Then say, fuck that guy, and try to go back to normal campus life instead of living in fear.
All right, so who's on you've got a Rushmore of Michigan State all time. Izzo's definitely on it. 40 years later. I mean, he's the guy they turn to speak in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Basketball, you're turning to your basketball coach to speak in that situation. You're on the Mount Rushmore. John Hanna, certainly. You probably go Magic, just because he's the most famous person. I would say Magic is on there. And it would be a tough, do you stay with coaches and like Duffy Doherty? Do you do? I don't. That's
Throw Ishbia on there.
At this point, yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah, it's a really good question. That'd be an interesting debate, July topic, as Jason would say.
JD next. I just want to say thank you to Graham. Instead of retweeting unverified, irresponsible information during the event or writing disgusting comparisons to tragic events that in no fucking way whatsoever have any relation to each other, you dropped everything to go endure what was probably the hardest night of your career and did your job for a community on the hardest night of theirs. You truly are one of the few great.
Oh, something got cut off.
Oh, yeah. Great J.O. journalism.
Yeah, jackasses, I think you're going to say. I'm one of the great jackasses. Appreciate it, JD.
I'm going to need 5 minutes of couch going off about the New York Times article, Tone Deaf, Irresponsible Journalism, that made our grief even worse. The opposite of your column, though, which was beautiful. Appreciate you guys and all of the MSU family. And from Ernie Nagy and Mojo Jojo from the Woodshed. Oh, and from the Woodshed. The morning after the shooting, a New York Times article titled Mass Shooting Places Michigan State Back In. Mass shooting places Michigan State back in uncomfortable national spotlight. Conflated the shooting with Nassar. I have written letters and posts, but been ignored by the New York Times. Would appreciate in a journalist's perspective, Graham, can you walk us through the levels of editorial and journalistic failure that caused the New York Times reporter Tiffany May to somehow link Tuesday's horrific tragedy to Nassar?
This is bad by the New York Times on a number of fronts. And if you haven't seen it, their initial story on this, very, very quickly, the background of MSU and the Nassar. I mean, why not just tie MSU to Magic or tie MSU to whatever? I mean, like, what are you doing here? There's no tie. Wasn't the piece. It never was the piece. I don't know how it got there. What's interesting is Tiffany May, from what I can tell, is like in the Hong Kong bureau. Like, this wasn't even, she's not even boots on the ground. It's like somebody here's what I think happened. Okay, so think about time of day and time zones. I think Tiffany May works the hours that this stuff happened overnight, and that happens with some of the desks of these places. They'll have a desk, an overnight desk in London or something, because those people work normal hours that fit, their time zone more for the overnight copy. So my guess is that's how she got on writing something. That she chose to write it this way is bizarre. That an editor somewhere didn't say, we don't need that, is awful. And it just, the problem for the New York Times is, and the New York Times is one of the few, first of all, it's a very important publication. They do a lot of good work. They're not infallible. And they're actually profitable, unlike a lot of journalism companies these days. But you lose a lot of people for a long time, maybe life. There are a lot of young people. There are a lot of people who care about Michigan State, a huge alumni base right now that are pissed off at the New York Times. Some I know who are canceling subscriptions. Some may never go back and see them the same. These are mistakes you cannot make. You can be critical of something. People cannot love what you do. There are lots of times that you write something, people don't like hearing negative things about their people or their place, and sometimes it's deserved, and the job is to hold people accountable. It is not to make people comfortable. But this was just uncalled for. And I don't know how it happened. I know they've sort of buried it, but they haven't taken it down. And then it reeks of a style of journalism that was existing much more 6 years ago, much more by places that were desperate for page views. It's way too sensationalized. It's way too trying to do something that's intelligent and winds up being really stupid, like it was incredibly dumb, and I don't know why it happened. It wouldn't happen at the LSJ. It probably wouldn't happen most places. MSU has been a punching bag for national outlets quite a bit, and some of that at times has been deserved, but not like this, and not like some of the stuff we've seen. And it's ass. And just remember, people are national writers. I'm not going to do my whole national writer bit here, Jason.
Sorry.
But people are national writers. Everything. Oh, national writer.
Yeah.
Anybody? You can. It ain't that hard to be a national writer. Let me just say that. Let me put that like that right now. If I wanted to be a national writer, I'd be a fucking national writer. Like it's not that hard. I mean, Brendan Quinn, bless his heart, fought like hell, did not want to become a national writer, tried to keep covering Michigan State and Michigan. I respect him for that. And it's not that there aren't great national writers who are important voices, but it's a hard job in the sense that when you do swoop into something, you need to be delicate. You need to write in your lane. You need to reach out and figure out what is the story, and then just have some journalistic common sense and decency, and this was not it. I don't know why they did this. I still respect the New York Times. I still read the New York Times. I still think they do a lot of important work, but this is the sort of thing that reminds you that even a place like that can be absolute ass.
And that's what's a bummer, because you think of the New York Times like it would be the last, like you would think other publications would maybe try something like that, right, to get clicks, and the New York Times putting something like that out, you're just like, oh, geez.
Yeah, you don't need this. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense.
You have a good reputation. Like, why are you throwing something like that out there?
There were stories that played it more straight, but this was a weird deal. And maybe it's the writer's experience with MSU is just this and that and whatever. And I do think the fact that it was the woman who did it, and based on where she appears to be based on her bio, had everything to do with time zones and when the shooting happened.
Cara Lee up next. Longtime listener, proud Spartan alum. I'm deeply devastated for the lives lost and enduring trauma for all affected. I cry for the unfathomable terror and agony experienced, and because far too many still did not want to move to enact change to prevent this from happening again. Your column was raw, heartbreaking, and incredibly moving. Appreciate you and your work, and the two of you doing a show this week. And lastly, Izzo is the heart of MSU. So much more than a coach to so many of us. Hashtag Spartan Strong.
Well, thank you, Kara. I think we've had people bring up Izzo before here. I think what his speech at the vigil was really good. It was really good. And he has not always been great in situations, we know, where he's had to be the sort of the face of the university. But this is one where you could feel how deeply he cares, how much this place is him. And I know, struck a chord with people who aren't even Spartans. Sean Windsor was at the press conference yesterday, and he asked Izzo a question about this because Windsor's wife, who is not a Spartan, was watching the vigil and was really, really struck by it, and just was struck by him and what he said. And I think a lot of people out there, I mean, just an enormous crowd. I mean, he is a guy who is, and he is not perfect in any stretch. He is a complicated individual like we all are. But there is no question that he cares. That Michigan State is just ingrained in every ounce of who he is. And that comes out. And he did it really well. And I think it mattered to a lot of people. And those are times where you've really got to, where you realize that he is more than, I mean, that's your basketball coach. You think about that, like you just don't ask a basketball coach most places to Nate Oates isn't doing that tomorrow at Alabama. You know what I mean? Right. It's just, he's been there 40 years and
you can't blame Nate Oates.
No,
right?
you wouldn't.
Because
but you wouldn't ask him.
Has a certain different cachet.
You wouldn't ask Mel Tucker to do it. It doesn't make sense. He's not. People. It wouldn't come across as like, wait a sec, why? He's the football coach doing this. He's been here a couple years. That wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be right. It wouldn't feel right. But Izzo is MSU, and that is a.
Like he says, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and that's what people love about him, and that's where faults come from, though. Because if you wear your emotions on your sleeve, sometimes you're going to say stuff, but yeah, it was an unbelievable speech by Izzo.
What I loved yesterday in the press conference, he talked a little bit about players and them sort of saying, what we can do is play a game, is be a distraction, is bring joy that way. And then later on, he got into it, and I think this is where you see growth even in him. He just talked about, he wanted to bring that up at the vigil, but it just felt so selfish. It's like, yeah, but there are brothers, sisters, friends, parents who lost a friend, a child, a sibling, and none of this shit really matters. And so it's hard to, and I think he knew what to leave out, and then later knew how to address how that made him feel. And I think it does. The situation with Steven Izzo, who was right near Berkey Hall, right around the time it happened, picking up his girlfriend, having your own child as part of this deal, I think probably changes the way he thinks. But then also, if you're a coach, and anybody who's coach probably knows this, you think, your parents drop these kids off on your campus, you're sort of directed with making sure they have an experience that's safe. And so he's probably felt that for years about a lot of kids.
Alex James next. Crises bring the worst out of some and the best out of some. Unfortunately, there are way too many of the former with Twitter accounts.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about earlier. Have you seen? I mean, I have not seen a lot of shit on Twitter. And have you seen much?
No, like regarding what?
Just like
people being annoyed by the Spartan Strong thing, or
just being jackasses in this situation. I have not seen it, and I'm glad that I don't. And what's weird is my Twitter is. I mean, since Elon got a hold of things, like boo, my Twitter is not my Twitter anymore. Like I have lots of things. I'm like, why is this person's tweets constantly in my? I mean, shoot. I mean,
mine.
Yeah, I thought I blocked Jason. I've got like everything I tweet about anything. I've got like some porn bot saying hi to me. I'm like, well, what? You're ruining the conversation here. Get your porn bot ass out of here. It
goes off your search history apparently.
Oh, does it? Oh, that explains a lot.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Jay Riemenschneider next. Sad that it takes a terrible tragedy to put sports into perspective. I know that they will always be heated rivals, but I hope the heightened vitriol and hate between the two schools can cool way down and stay down now that everyone needs to come together and pull in the same direction. And from Captain Dave, MSU, 2 questions. With a very impressive and important show of support from Michigan for the MSU community, do you think the rivalry becomes less venomous than it has become? Also, for the newer listeners, what is the origin story of the Hoff research waiting music?
So the Hoff thing is, first of all, we just love David Hasselhoff for some reason. I don't know.
Started there.
Yeah. And when did it, I mean, it was just like you used to just play random songs, and at some point Hoff stuck, right?
No, well, I would have to go back and, I don't know. I'm never going to go back. What am I talking about? No, it's just, you kept having to look stuff up, and I'm like, wow, it's just like kind of dead air. We just kind of mumbled while we waited. I'm like, I don't know. Why not some Hoff?
Yeah, and we must have played some other stuff at some point, but the Hoff stuck.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Because early on, for the originals will remember this. I mean, we did 2 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Sure did.
And so, we were, holy shit.
Which isn't crazy. I mean, talking sports and stuff.
No, for lots
like
of people
a two-person operation.
For people who this is, yeah, right. It was, anyway. And so there were times we would be talking about all sorts of subjects, and we'd have to we used Hoff a lot more. So that's where that began. To the question from Captain Dave and Jay about and sort of getting into the vitriol, I don't know. I do think it resets it a little bit, which was important given where it was after the football game last year. I think that's important, and so it may climb back up to that place again, but I think it starts from a different place. And that to me is healthy because it had become an unhealthy rivalry. I mean, I was not looking forward to this next Michigan State game. I was kind of hoping somehow they would not play for a couple of years, which is weird, and they're not going to do that. And financially, they can't do that. But I am hopeful that that sort of the human side of things, because I do think a lot of these people just exist anyway. They're just not real vocal on Twitter too. And they're not vocal, but it had gotten ugly. It had gotten to a place that this is maybe this at least forces it to reset, and we'll see where it goes.
Couch on fire.
One more from Jay.
Oh, sorry, Jay. Jesus, where am I skipping these? From Jay Riemenschneider?
Yeah.
Where's it at?
Did you open the one that said use these? The second?
No.
All right.
Wait, hold on a second.
Get some off.
Yeah, give me some off.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl.
All right. This one from Jay. Michigan's NCAA tourney chances are all but dead unless they win the Big Ten tourney. So I almost wouldn't mind MSU winning this game, considering all the Spartan community has been through, and seeing Michigan fans and the team giving MSU a standing ovation and the band playing Victory for MSU.
So I don't know if they'll go as far as the band playing that. I know they're planning to play the alma mater, but
I think that's a little too far, no?
But I do think it will be a scene like anything else. And part of me is not looking forward to this covering this game. It'll be exhausting. There will be lots of self-serving media there. Like I love basketball season for the routine. I talk about that all the time. I love the way the season was going. I love the fact that on Sunday in Columbus, I'm having a conversation where it's just me talking with Joey Hauser and there are a couple other reporters in the locker room, but it's not a fuss. The whole thing is like manageable and an interesting season. I love that part of this. And this is not about me, and this is but what I'm saying is it's not going to be. Some of this is going to be the media show is going to be overwhelming. I do think, though, what is being done by Michigan is sincere for most people and important to do. And I think it'll be a scene like nothing else, and it'll be touching, and I think it'll be moving, and I think that part of it will be really cool.
All right, Couch on Fire. Next. Number 1, Izzo is truly our university's treasure. 2, Northwestern is just having an amazing year. Who saw that coming? And 3, Saturday's game will be unlike any Michigan game in our memory. Thanks for coming back on here. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Couch on Fire. Northwestern beating Indiana, Purdue, right? They're just they got a chance. Like
killed my parlay, those bastards.
And Purdue falling apart a little bit. Like, and everybody hits the streak. I think it's good for Purdue that they've hit this adversity before you get to the postseason, because at some point it was probably going to happen.
But watching Northwestern double Edey and watching him throw the ball out of bounds like 7 times, I'm like,
it was interesting. Yeah,
can't you do that?
And then they really collapsed at Maryland. Purdue did last night. I mean, there's a small chance Northwestern can get a share of this title. Now,
is Maryland good or just when they play at home? Are we scared of Maryland when they're at home and that's it, right?
Yeah, but they were pretty good at Purdue the first time.
Yeah.
Michigan State obviously took care of them. That's a good question. I'm not enamored with their roster, but they're obviously not bad. Northwestern's schedule is sick down the stretch. It's not easy. So I think the odds that they get a share or somebody else get a share are still unlikely. But Purdue's got to fix it. You got young guards, and they've lost a little bit of their mojo.
Old Soldier next. Still a South Lansing kid after all these years, but I thought it was Ovid Elsie, like mid-Michigan's version of the Twin Cities. No?
Well, it's Ovid Elsie High School, but Jason lives in Ovid. It's 2 separate towns.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, don't
come over to the Ovid side. I don't know. Like it's some scary town or something.
Well, no, and what's interesting is different. I mean, when I covered high school sports in Freeport, Illinois, in that area, there was there were towns that were like this and not like it. There would be like Eastland and Pearl City were separate cities and separate high schools, but then they would play the same football team. They'd be called Eastland Pearl City, and I don't know why I brought
Noted.
that up. Fix that in post. Thank you.
Nick Palmer next. Being a Hooper from a small town, going to Michigan State was the greatest goal one could think of. It is the coolest place with the coolest vibes that can inspire and motivate to achieve our wildest dreams and aspirations.
I mean, I think a lot of people feel a certain way. The thing that, Michigan State to me is part of the community. It's a place I care about because I care about this community. It's part of the heartbeat of this area. But it is not my school. It is not I think of this city and this community in a lot of ways. There are a lot of things that I think are the heartbeat, are really important. But I think for a lot of people, and the reach of this is that MSU is a really special place. And we all have places we think fondly because of certain points in our lives that we experienced or we lived. I mean, for fuck's sake, I bring up Kalamazoo all the time, right?
Drink.
Yeah.
People are going to be hammered at work on Friday.
Not good. So I mean, I get the vibes. And I think a lot of people have, especially those college years, are very formative.
Plus size softball dad next. Number 1. Never thought there would be a bra bet exemption because MSU misses their home game against the worst team in the conference. But sometimes the world sucks. Call off the bet because fuck that asshole. 2, I don't know what the solution is, but making sure someone that had recently turned evil doesn't have access to firearms seems like a good place to start. And 3, can't wait to see absolutely nothing change again.
So, the bra bet, I mean, I'm not letting this fuck stick let me off the hook. Now, I think we should move it to 19 wins if the Minnesota game isn't played. I think that's only fair.
Is there time to fit the Minnesota game in, or would they have to play 3 games?
So they're working on it. It's tricky because my guess is it happens the last week if it happens. There were 2 options, I thought, in terms of one was moving so another game would have to be moved because there's a Nebraska game that could go. Michigan State's supposed to play Nebraska on Tuesday night. That has to stay because that arena apparently has like the state tournament that weekend and can't move. So now there's a Minnesota-Rutgers game that would be Thursday that would need to move to Tuesday so that Minnesota game could be played on Thursday. And then you would have Saturday at Iowa, probably Tuesday at Nebraska, Thursday home against Minnesota, Saturday home against Ohio State. Now, ideally, you'd move that Ohio State game to Sunday and spread them out a little bit. I don't know. I don't think they know 100%. As of yesterday, they were still working on it. So it's still up in the air.
Mojo Jojo. Number 1, it's extremely frustrating to know that nothing will ever change, even if every American becomes personally affected. This only happens here. Friends from the UK don't want to move to the U.S. due to this issue, and my German high school exchange student was nervous to come to school with me. 2, for those who can, there's a GoFundMe for one of the 5 victims who's in critical care. The bills are staggering. Healthcare, alongside gun violence, is another broken piece of our American culture.
Yeah, that's been. By the way, that the young woman who's a migrant family, I don't believe had insurance and gotten raised more than $260,000. Although the who knows what the bills. Medical care is not cheap, obviously. And I don't know what.
There's no way to waive the charges for it.
It'd be interesting that it happened on MSU's campus. I don't know how MSU may be able to do something here.
Draw up a law or something, or
I would like to think MSU just steps in here, but still a family that's in need and is traveling that does not have great funds, and that's been shared and that story's out there. I think you can find that pretty well. I'll try to retweet, and I've tweeted it out once. Look, and we've got some. I mean, one of the frustrating things is this stuff doesn't change. It didn't change with Sandy Hook, and it's frustrating for me. I'm in a weird place with it where I've sadly accepted it, and I had a friend going back to high school from Scotland who visited, and we didn't have the school shootings back then, but we had this gun culture to a certain degree, and we had a road rage incident when I was driving him downtown Lansing where this other guy got out of the car and went to open our door, and I just took off through a red light. And I actually knew who the kid was too. But I wasn't that freaked out, but he was. And he was on like the Scottish 18 under rugby team. He could kick anybody's ass.
Did the guy have a gun? Or
I don't think so. But that's what my friend assumed from Scotland. This is America. He's got a gun, so he was freaked out by it, and so it's a very different place than it is anywhere else in the world. And I am a little bit hopeful in this state, at least, because of the way the last election went and who's in charge, and also the anger and care that's going on. I think from both parties that we may get some things done here that aren't elsewhere. But it's frustrating.
And I'm
as
not
hell.
sure of a solution, but I think these guys just don't pop out of nowhere. There's signs everywhere. I just think if you see something, say something. I mean, the guy was shooting guns in his back fucking yard, right? And he had a gun charge, although it was a misdemeanor that he completed 18 months of probation. But still, he had a gun in the backyard, and the dad knew about it. People need to say shit more. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Neurotic Pants. Number 1, is it crass if I even mention sports right now? When will it be the right time? 2, how do we appreciate those who run into harm's way while still voicing our concerns about the shooter slipping through the net? 3, did Detroit journalists and the New York Times really fuck up, or are we angry?
Detroit, I don't know what you mean by Detroit journalists screwing up. There were some things that were tweeted off the scanner. You shouldn't never share scanner traffic, and that began with somebody at the State News did it, but that's a college kid. Like, scanner stuff is notoriously unreliable because it's what people are seeing in real time and what they're thinking. It's not confirmed information. New York Times absolutely fucked up, without question. How do you appreciate those who run in harm's way? Well, first of all, they found him pretty quickly. But it's a tricky situation, though. He was on foot, and I'm sure once he got out of East Lansing too, he just blended into Lansing pretty well, and he went toward if you know that stretch that he walked, and I know it pretty well. That's the side of like the northeast side of Lansing that he probably looked like a lot of other people walking, and you're not going to just think that's a shooter necessarily. So,
there was so many thoughts going through heads, especially if you listen to the scanner, right? There was different shooters at different spots. So a guy walking around, who knows? But
it's a hard
all
thing.
the facts will come out, I'm sure, at some point.
Is it crass to even mention sports right now? I don't think so. I just, and it's different for everybody. If your head's not there, there's nothing wrong with spending the weekend just watching Netflix, or if you just want to read coverage of it or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're ready for something else, there's nothing wrong with that too.
Nestle's Quick Hotel next. Number 1, I'm not sure what it's going to feel like the next time I'm on campus. I hope I have enough great memories that I'll still feel that awe and joy I always have since the first football game 25 years ago. I'm old enough to know that this campus can overcome any feelings of anxiety. 2, while sports are trivial, I believe they can help the young whose earliest memory of MSU will be sirens and seeking shelter. I hope they can go on and build new memories with each other in safety and pageantry. Go Green.
So the people I feel bad for are students whose college experience has been at MSU, COVID, and now a shooting, right?
Yeah.
And I feel bad for kids in general, high school kids who missed all of high school of that, and young elementary kids who just, the school thing was well intended, but a mess up. I think a lot of places we're going to find out, but with shutting down schools. But if that's your experience over 4 years, and then this is there, and you're almost done, it's going to be really hard to move on. You hope you have enough good memories to also have those blend into your overall experience. But you're right. If you're a freshman living in these dorms, that's there will be some kids who will transfer, and that's fine too. I mean, if you're just not feeling comfortable, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, you know what, I need a fresh start somewhere else.
But to transfer, it can happen. A school shooting can happen anywhere.
Totally.
Right? Even if you transfer, are you still safe? And
yeah, but the odds are still, it was interesting talking to these kids because they all know it can happen. They're all aware that at some point it seems like it's their turn. And yet, deep down, you don't think it's going to be you until that moment. Now, they're trained for it, and to their credit, the kids knew how to barricade. The kids were letting each other in other dorm rooms. They were. It is a well-trained student world of gun violence and gun shooting, right? And that's sad. It really is. But they know how to shelter in place and lock down and be as safe as possible. You're right.
But how do you make it safe in some of these halls? Do you make it like TSA where there's only one way in?
You don't want that. You really, to me, it's again, it's gun culture. And I don't know with this particular guy. I know that we're going to get into some of the criticisms about the felony charge that was reduced. Because with every case, there's always a situation where you go, boy, there was a spot where somebody could have done something. But I know other things where I know people who, somebody tried to have committed for a while because they needed to. And it didn't stick. It didn't even stick for the 72 hours. And something wound up happening later. Like that stuff is, that's not... We got issues there in terms of our ability to, you don't want to restrict people's freedoms or their rights and other things, but it's hard. There are certain people that should not have access to weapons, and how do you make sure they don't?
Steve, up next. Most importantly, the constant trauma these students have lived. Oxford, the pandemic, and now this. A different world, less importantly, not a fan of playing an away basketball game Saturday against that team, that fan base, etc. Don't see it.
I think it'll be all right there. I think they'll come into an applause. I think once the game starts, it'll feel somewhat normal. It's going to be an interesting Saturday night. I'm curious to see it. And I'm also prepared to be annoyed by my colleagues.
Some dude up next. Number 1, Lily Guinea had an excellent tweet about the selfish behavior of some journalists covering the recent campus events, particularly, those not from the area. I'm wondering, Graham, if you've seen any of this type of stuff and are willing to share your experiences. 2, along these lines, this shitty thing has given me and some others I've spoken with an enhanced feeling of how special and unique the MSU community is. For a lot of us, it is really different, or is every school that way? And 3, holy shit, Northwestern and Nebraska Appreciate you guys, but also all the contributors to the show.
Appreciate you some, dude. And one of the things I love about the show is that we can go from something serious to holy shit in Northwestern and Nebraska, and we can do it in one line of quick takes. To the first question about, and several students have shared, and I saw Lily did as well, some of the journalists' behaviors, and we mentioned this at the top, just sort of the insensitive way they've asked questions and asked about trauma. And it just, one of your strengths as a journalist ought to be talking to people. It ought to be communicating. It ought to be being empathetic. It ought to be being perceptive of when somebody isn't in a place to talk, and when they are, and because some people really do want to talk. Some people want to share their experiences. Some people, as soon as they realize you're a willing ear and don't come across as a vulture, they're happy to. And so you just got to read that. And some people won't want to. And there will be kids who feel like you're trying to take advantage of the situation and are unhappy with you, and that's okay. The job is to go out and report. The job is the job. You do the job. So yeah, I did not see it when I was out there, but I have really only been in terms of like talking to kids on campus out there the night it happened. And the night it happened, there were some other reporters out there, and some even later than myself. But where I was right near Campbell Hall and the Union, not far from Berkey and all that. But I was not, I wanted kids who weren't being, I didn't want packed journalism. I wanted to talk to kids. I wanted them to, and those conversations were very careful. And there were a couple kids who didn't want to chat, and that was 100% okay. And then some kids you read initially, and you're like, I don't think that kid looks pretty shook. I don't know that I want to even approach them.
How did you decide where your location, like where you would start? Like, where did you park and all that stuff?
I parked over at People's Church right there, and then I just walked, and then I just kind of, there weren't a lot of people stopping you because the police were in a manhunt. So you could kind of, a couple people, at one point, I wore this bright yellow stocking cap that I sometimes wear when I go on walks with my mom at night, because I thought, I don't want to look like some, police are out with guns looking for somebody. I want to look clearly like a reporter, like somebody who's not somebody you're looking for, right? But then I was too easy to see. The police were like, what are you doing back there? It's like, all right, I'm done with this. And I went and got my Irish cap, and I was able to wiggle myself around a little bit. And police are okay. Like, what you want to do is don't look like you're trying to hide. Like, I would go areas near police cars where I was clearly trying to take in the scene. And there wasn't, for a long while, the students were just sheltered in place. There was nobody out there. I got back in my car at one point, went to one of the press conferences that was over on Forest Road, and then drove back, came out in the back way behind Spartan Stadium in that area, see how close I could get, and then went back over to People's Church and Park. There was a long time where other than law enforcement, there was nobody on the streets. The question is, this shitty thing has given me and some others I've spoken to enhanced feeling of how special and unique the MSU community is for a lot of us. Is it really different, or is every school that way? I think a lot of people feel that way about their schools. And so, but I don't know. I didn't go there. I have a lot of friends there. I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people have had great experiences at MSU. And but there are probably other schools where people feel just as strongly.
Gavin Haas next. Number one, you never expect something to happen in a place you care so much about until it's too late. Nothing hurts more than knowing the devastation Monday night's tragedy had on the university, and the fact that there will always be a constant reminder of what happened. 2, the reaction to what happened Monday night has shown what MSU truly is, one big family. I'm grateful that Michigan State has such a loving, caring, and expressive fan base. Seeing everyone come together and heal has been nothing short of beautiful. I love this school. And 3, Tom Izzo represents all of the good in humanity. There's no better representative or leader for the university. We're fortunate to experience all of his greatness on and off the court. Name the court after him when his time of retiring comes, like Duke and Coach K.
I think that will happen. I think Tom Izzo court will be very quickly. There will be probably a statue too. Like,
was there a question before this unfortunate?
No,
thing?
No, I don't think so at all. You can't name arenas after people anymore because, if you're ever going to change the name of arena, you do it because somebody's sponsoring it and they want to
like the Value City Arena that
Yeah,
Ohio State plays.
You're
in.
taking the
Is there
money.
a Value City open anywhere?
The only way it happens is if Matt Ishbia pays for it and puts Izzo's name on it, like he did with the Tom Izzo football building, right? So there's already that.
Let's do it, Ish.
But yeah, the Izzo court is without question, and Gavin is, Gavin is almost 17. Wait, in fact, is this his birthday around? If it's not,
He's 16 again.
Happy birthday, Gavin. Either way, welcome to 17.
Yeah, man.
It's a good year. I think it's a whole nother level of movies you can get into now, right? The NC-17 movies that are still around.
NC-17?
I don't know. I don't even know if movie theaters are doing all right. But
right.
But Gavin is raised in the I know a lot of our listeners are who are a little younger, in the age of shooting drills, and this stuff isn't all that unexpected.
Professor next. Our generation has failed Gavin Haas and his generation. I hope we are willing to do something about it. That's the question. What are we going to do about it?
I don't know. And it doesn't feel like, it's not going to happen at the federal level right now. I mean, I think we're pretty aware of that. And so maybe in the state, with the redistricting and but I do think there is pull from what I've heard on both sides, which may help get something done. Again, there are limitations to what can be done, but I'm really hopeful that we because if it's state by state, the problem is it's like Chicago. They have certain laws. People always go to Indiana. You know what I mean? Indiana ain't that far. But at least you hope we get something done in the state. And I do hope in my lifetime we're at a point where we've sort of solved this to some degree with sort of the will of a nation that's just freaking tired of it at some point.
Ken Chu next. Thanks for doing a show. I need it right now. Struggling to put what I'm feeling into words, but I'll take comfort in the words of the Couch and the Rube family. We all need each other right now. Go Green.
We're happy to do a show. And, thanks for listening.
Just waiting
and
for the time to be right, I guess.
Yeah, and we would have done one actually Thursday night, although who knows when you listen to it. But Mother Nature decided to throw a curveball, and that was pretty nasty. Pretty nasty last night.
Ovid. John next. Number 1, prayers for the kids and families that were lost Monday night. May their memories be eternal. 2, thank you to the police that rushed to the scene. 3, MSU has handled this as well as possible. And thank you for the column and the continued podcast. MSU parent and alum.
Appreciate you, John. I do think MSU's handled this pretty well, and the MSU police were in terms of their communication and the multiple press conferences that night. And I thought the guy, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but the guy who was the deputy chief, who was doing a lot of the talking, grew into the role as the night went on. The first press conference a little rough, looked like he was going to struggle with it, but by the last, he was really good.
Oh, the interim.
Yeah, Ferentz. Oh,
here, Hoff.
Hoff. Yeah, please. Jeez, this is bad.
We look up third string defensive lineman. We should look that up.
Yeah.
When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling, and I'm high on believing that you're in love with me.
Chris Rosman.
Yeah, there we go. Rosman. Sorry. Thank you for getting to it quicker than me. Well, you actually
That was
helped
Dominic.
Me. Thank you, Dominic.
Listening live.
Yeah, I was just pulling up, but that's the first time I was glad. This is a serious show when Jason isn't just over here yelling out names like Mr. T.
Do you know how hard I thought about that?
Carl Winslow.
Yeah, I decided to hold back on that one.
Thank you.
Some good timing.
Appreciate it, Dominic.
Corey Ostrom. Are we going to answer anything from that one, or did we?
No, yeah. It's
okay. Corey Ostrom. Number 1, I am striving to have one more, I'm striving, to have more empathy going forward. We all could. It's okay that people think differently. We don't have to agree. America was built on differing opinions. We need to remember there's far more good than evil, and love one another. Hug your people often. 2, if Tyson Walker is both most efficient point guard and the guy you want to take clutch shots, is Hogard better off the bench at game's end and at the 2 spot, or status quo? 3, what did 2 guys think about Dickinson's behavior at Wisconsin Tuesday, i.e. entering in a ski mask and gun gestures after a 3? Jet Howard's shirt choice. douchey, and inappropriate, or okay?
All right, some good stuff. Let's do some basketball here. The Tyson Walker thing, if he's the most efficient point guard and the guy you want taking clutch shots, are you better off with Hogard off the bench, etc.? No, Hogard is the guy who, I mean, Walker has some limitations in terms of his ability to cause havoc in the paint because of his size, and something is lost from Walker. It worked against Ohio State, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go there again if Hogard is struggling or in foul trouble, going to him over Trey Holloman. But ultimately, Hogard played better in the second half. Their ceiling is tied to Hogard, and Walker is better when he doesn't have all of that on him to some degree. Now, he can step up and do it, and that's a luxury that MSU has. I want to ask you, Jason, about the next one. What do we think about Hunter Dickinson's behavior at Wisconsin Tuesday, entering a ski mask, the gun gestures after a three, Jet Howard's choice, which said, like, free Juwan, douchey, inappropriate, or okay?
Free Juwan?
Yeah, it was weird. So
because of what, the last time, or they punched Greg Gard or slapped? I mean, Dickinson's obvious. He's a douche, and that would never go on at Michigan State. If that was brought up to Izzo about this player is about to do this, he would just lose his shit. And I don't know what Juwan Howard's thinking either, letting him do shit like that. Like, I get wanting to be a villain, but you're not good at it. So stop doing it.
You're losing. Yeah, you didn't score barely in the second half. You
can't
lost
back
the game.
This shit up, dude. Stop doing it.
Yeah, and the big thing is it's just, and I understand that I don't think Hunter Dickinson meant anything by the ski mask in terms of, and I saw he said on his pod that it was, not that I listen to his pod, I see clips, that it was, long planned. And it would have been
trying to steal a win. I get it.
It would have been fine,
bit.
but you gotta. It's the second there's a shooting with a guy at a ski mask on Monday night, you bail on it, and you've got to have that sort of level of awareness. And then also the people around you should have that level of awareness. And that's the problem is he's like the junior, he's like the senior, he is the leader in a lot of ways. Whereas if that happens at Michigan State, forget the fact that I don't think it would happen at MSU. I think people would step in. But Malik Hall would say, yo, no. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
There's no Malik Hall, I don't think, on that team. Jet Howard, shirt choice, strange. But I don't know that college kids do dumb things. I mean, he's a freshman in college.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a junior in high school, I don't know if I should tell this story. Nope. Well, okay. Sort of.
Kind of have to now.
Well, I'll just leave certain details out. We had a teacher arrested who was my tennis coach, science teacher, Sexton High School, junior. And we basically, at one point, wore shirts that said to free him. All right. We showed up at school, a few of us, wearing shirts that said to free. I'm not going to say the name, and I'm not going to say what he did. But
he was a teacher.
By second hour, parents had called in. Like, it was a problem. It was a problem. And I felt bad. I was in Mr. Yang's algebra class, and he was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And one of the young women was pissed off, and I understandably so. And I remember trying to get out of the house that morning and putting something over it because my mom was a little on to me. And one of my friends, didn't even have another shirt, and he just went, bare-chested all day at school, which is weird. You could get away with stuff at Lansing Sex in the 1990s. But, that was just dumb. It was incredibly dumb. And I was not a necessarily a dumb or non-empathetic or 16-year-old, but every 16-year-old, 17-year-old, however old I was, made a really immature, stupid decision. And he's only a couple years older, and so people got to be there to help them do that. And it wasn't that bad a decision.
Like your father who coaches the team?
Yeah, kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know Jet personally, and Izzo was talking last night about how much he likes Jet Howard. Spent some time with him at Media Day, and I don't have any reason not to like the kid. This was just a very immature decision.
Yeah. David Kalpolka next. Number one.
By the way, that was a story we're telling, presented by our friends at Midtown Brewing Company, 402 South Washington Avenue. Good cozy place for a great date night. And
somewhere the dean just shed a tear.
Yeah.
David Kalpolka next. Number one. I was a freshman in the Spartan Marching Band, fall of 1986, and I have lived through a lot of bad MSU news. Perlis, couches, riots, Cedar Fest, Saban, and that's just last century. I'm in the Bay Area. When I saw the headline, I got that old familiar gang of dread. Pang of dread. turning into live CNN and Twitter. I could not have been more proud of the display of competence and unity from MSU, the students, and the state of Michigan. Grace under pressure. Well done. And 2, the Silicon Valley Spartans are hooking up with the San Francisco Spartans at a pub Saturday to watch the Michigan game. A vigil will be a half hour prior. I don't have the venue, but check Silicon Valley Spartans or Facebook for details. We may even invite some Wolverines.
That's cool. You see that everywhere. I saw the DC alumni group did something, a vigil. Look, the reach, this is a very local story to me, but the reach is, Michigan State is a massive state university with tons of alumni everywhere and alumni organizations, and so the reach is national. It is, and it affects, and a lot of people feel a certain way about Michigan State and feel like something's been taken from them.
Chris Eastlick up next. Number 1, Graham, thanks to you and your colleagues for the excellent coverage in a horrible situation. Heart goes out to the entire university. P.S. I've already won the Hopcat card, so I actually mean that. 2, Matty Sissoko is a great human, and I can't get mad at him anymore after that Final Four is not on the schedule interview. Cue the Matt Shepard bit. 3, MSU will need to rely on defense, and that's fine, but worried about the roster depth on teams that will play a faster pace, especially with foul trouble. We saw us wear down at Indiana. And bonus, MSU was the only choice for the Super Bowl turf. If your field looks good in November, you can make it look even better in Arizona.
By the way, that was a really good interview with Matty Sissoko on the Final Four is not on the schedule podcast. And they did another one this week that was, I think, well orchestrated given the circumstances. They do pregame breakdowns, in-depth coverage for every game, pre and post game, and it's a great way to better understand the strategy, what they did right, what they did wrong. They'll have Matty Sissoko, they've had me on, they've had Jack Ebling, Thomas Kelly, Mike Garland, Jeremy Fears, Garrick Normand. Good fan podcast, and you can find it on YouTube at youtube.com at TFFINOTS for the videos, or just visit the Final Four is not on the schedule.com. Matty Sissoko, good guy. Matt Shepard bit, very well played. So to the basketball part of this, though, worried about the roster depth and teams that'll play at a faster pace, especially with foul trouble. The thing that Michigan State's been able to do recently is they control the pace. Like, their defense is so good. It's the best in the Big Ten right now, efficiency-wise, and also in three-point coverage and effective field goal percentage. And they don't, and we've seen them get stretched occasionally, and the Indiana game's a good example of that. And we'll see them replay Indiana and how that goes in a week's time. But they force you to play their game in the 60s. Izzo hates it. He doesn't want this to be who they are. It worked against an undisciplined team like Ohio State because they got frustrated at the slow pace. They got frustrated that they had to defend for 24 seconds on the shot clock, and that may work to some advantage for them. But I just think this is who MSU is going to be, and it's not going to change this season. And also, you're 100% right. You cannot – the Super Bowl turf should have even been a bigger story because I think it affected the Eagles too, and like the pass rushing, and people couldn't get footing. Like, that cannot happen. You cannot host the Super Bowl if you cannot have grass that people can keep their footing on.
Matthew Simmons with some hoops talk. Who do you think the number one seeds in the tournament will be? Who do you think the overall number one seed will be? And what seed do you think MSU will be?
So it's really hard to determine with MSU because I think they have a chance. So say they get to 12-8, which is where it looked like they were going to if the Minnesota game's made up. The problem with making up the Minnesota game now is even though that feels like a game they ought to win, does it then does that affect another game because you're bunching at a bunch of games? So they may beat Minnesota anyway, but now are you more tired against Ohio State, who you ought to beat, frankly, and Nebraska's before that on the road. So maybe it's a week you can withstand it. If they get to 12-8 in the Big Ten, I think Michigan State has a chance, depending on what happens to the Big Ten tournament. It could do a 5 seed even, 6 seed. Give me 1 second. Give me some Hoff for 1 second.
Off.
It's as sweet as candy. Your taste is on my mind.
Okay, so Purdue is sliding right now. As long as the slide doesn't stop, they're going to be a 1 seed. I think Alabama actually has a chance to be the overall number 1, which works out well for Michigan State. They played that team, and they weren't full strength when it happened. I think we all saw how good they were. I think the Pac-12, maybe UCLA or Arizona will. Arizona's lost a fair bit, but Arizona will get into one of those. Somebody from the Big 12 deserves it. Houston, arguably. So it actually, that's too many teams, isn't it? I don't know that Kansas gets it, though. Maybe the problem the Big 12 has is they have a lot of teams. If you win the Big 12, you have to be a 1 seed this year. So give me Kansas, Purdue, Alabama, Houston, I guess, would be my guess right now. But there's a chance Purdue slides into it, too, if they don't figure this out really quick. And the overall number 1 seed being Alabama.
Zach Ruffin next. I love the kid, but do you think it's time for Maddie to start behind Cooper and Kohler? It seems like Cooper provides the same level of defense with more offensive capability. We know what Kohler provides us offensively as well. What do you think? Thanks. I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, you don't want to lose. Like Sissoko's lost some confidence. I think that would hurt you there. So I think how you disperse the minutes changes, but I think you start Madi. There's a status thing with that. I think in certain matchups when it works, you want to just ride it. And defensively, it gives you some other things. So I would continue to start Madi Sissoko, but just be aware that, and you're seeing it now, he is sometimes the first guy out barely 2 minutes in when it doesn't look like a matchup that's going to work in his favor. They're not afraid to do that and play those other guys more. So I think that's fine. I think there's certain kids that starting matters, that who they are to the team. He's the starting center for Michigan State basketball, and I think for him to lose that, you might lose him in terms of, I'm not saying transfer, whatever, but I'm talking about lose him in terms of where his headspace is. And there are still teams you need the best version of Madi Sissoko to really have a chance. So I would keep him in the starting lineup. And Cooper's just not thick enough, right? It's not quite the same level of defense. Sometimes in certain matchups it's okay, but he's just not there yet. Let's take a really quick break. Come back. We'll dig into more of your thoughts, questions, and takes. Couch in the Rue, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis. Sorry, I screwed that. I've never screwed up the Skyman one. Skyman Premium Cannabis and our friends at Muskox High Quality Flannels.
Where else can you cheer on your team? Enjoy a mouth-watering burger or savory sushi. Sip on handcrafted cocktails or one of 46 beers on tap. Take your game day or date night to Cask & Company Kitchen Bar or Front 43 Neighborhood Pub near Frandor. 2 amazing places with one awesome blended modern American Asian menu. Catch the game on one of 30 60-inch TVs or stop in for the all-you-can-eat lunch buffet. Enjoy happy hour or elevate your night out at Cask & Company or Front 43 on East Saginaw in Lansing. Ever wondered just how comfortable you can be? Find out with Muskox high-quality flannels. Muskox is a Detroit-based company that creates durable comfort that'll last a lifetime. Muskox flannels are thoughtfully designed with 100% cotton that is ethically sourced and double brushed for softness. This will be the softest flannel you'll ever buy, guaranteed. For every $100 purchase, Muskox will donate $10 to the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. Get comfortable this fall and winter with Muskox flannels. Learn more or order yours today at gomuskox.com.
Christmas is around the corner and beautiful jewelry is on her Christmas list. So where will you go to buy that gorgeous diamond ring or that sparkly diamond necklace or that incredible diamond bracelet? Medawar Jewelers' 4 locations by the Lansing Mall by Meridian Mall in Jackson and in Portage have the largest selection and the latest designs of beautiful jewelry that she's been dreaming of. If an engagement ring is on your mind, come into Medawar Jewelers and let our professional staff explain to you all about natural and lab-created diamonds. Our diamonds are set by master jewelers whose passion for their art shows so clearly in each and every piece. So, for that perfect gift that's on her Christmas list, come into Medawar's by the Lansing Mall by Meridian Mall in Jackson and in Portage, and we'll help you find it.
Firekeepers Online Casino and Sportsbook is the site to play. Get your Vegas on right now from your phone, tablet, or laptop. All the hottest slots and tables, plus sports betting featuring in-game wagering. Download the app at firekeeperscasino.com. Go with the name you know. Firekeepers. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and located in Michigan. Gambling problem? Call the Michigan Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-270-7117.
Find Couch in the Rube podcasts on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and the Rube's favorite podcast addict.
Couch in the Rube, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis. Go to skymint.com. Check out their sale going on right now on North Brand. All sorts of really cool stuff. Skymint locations throughout the state of Michigan. Also go by Muskox high-quality flannels, including the Grand Flannel, which really cool in terms of density and thickness. Perfect balance for insulation and comfort in this transitional climate, which it doesn't feel like today, but when we get back up into the 40s and 50s and 60s and you want a flannel, Muskox has you covered. Go to gomuskox.com. And again, the promo code for $15 off from Couch in the Rube is CAW15. Let's dig back into these Groovy Donuts thoughts, takes, and just where your head is.
Bo McJunkin's next. Number 1, the New York Times is ass. I'm tired of our school being a punching bag, especially in a time of tragedy. It's shameful. 2, Michigan's hockey coach fits the culture. His goon comment is a reflection of the athletic department. His guys start stuff and then call the manager when someone fights back. 3, all refs should watch the Super Bowl up until the last call, which I didn't think was bad. They let the guys play. What a concept.
So to the New York Times part, I do think that, somebody just wrote back in that one of their frustrations is their inability to get, it was Ernie Nagy, to get a hold of somebody there, to get a response. And places have to be more responsive. We sometimes struggle with that. We don't have great customer service places anymore, at least the LSJ, although we try to be as responsive as we can. But you're right. You can't just live in this ivory tower and not respond to people. Somebody there should send an email and explain why they did it. And you can disagree then, but at least you have the respect of responding, which sometimes at places like the Times, people just sort of live above the people who read them, for sure.
From the Woodshed next. Number 1, Monday's events have left me in disbelief. You never think it'll happen to you, but when it does, it's earth-shattering. How long until both sides say enough is enough and work to fix this problem? If children fall victim to these heinous acts and nothing gets done, I fear nothing will ever happen. And 3, the MSU students involved in the sit-in at the Capitol make me proud to be a Spartan alum.
Yeah, enough is enough, right? Because the one thing I do think there is a political climate in Michigan right now, and there's a frustration in Michigan beyond the political climate because this is MSU. In this state, I think we'll see something happen. Nationally, I have less hope, and more the country's going to have to feel.
I just don't see anything changing.
Yeah, it's quite sad.
Jordan Bunt with just Spartan Strong, he says. Sparty99 says, the best 4 years of my life were in East Lansing, and my favorite memory is skipping a class at Berkey to grab a rodeo burger and a beer at Peanut Barrel. I hate that our lost ones will never have that opportunity. Also, Graham, well done. We don't deserve you. Appreciate you.
You do deserve me. Every community deserves a local columnist who gives a shit. And please make sure you keep giving me shit when I screw up in the
don't
days
worry.
that come. Yep. I get that though. And I think that's what you hope that students now have. Memories of things that are really cool moments. That day you skipped class and started at Crunchies at 1 p.m. and finished at 2 a.m. and with some friends or the girl you were trying to hook up with or whatever it might be.
But these students have you mean the year of the shooting, right?
And COVID and all that. Yeah,
right.
You just hope they find some great memories, and it'll be it'll be an interesting campus, I think, for them. I mean, there's going to be a lot of empathy on campus, and I think that there'll be a lot of students who have experienced the same and understand what their fellow student is going through, and maybe that creates an environment that helps healing.
Kurt Wisniewski next. The act of violence this past Monday makes me sick and heartbroken for my university. The vigil at the Union was chilling. So quiet. MSU is my second home. Why does this keep happening? I feel for these kids. It's now becoming the norm.
Yeah, and everything is different. Like we don't know this guy's motives yet. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation. And
finding out he was 43, I was like,
I was nervous.
Threw me off.
Yeah.
I got to say, I felt a little better knowing the guy was 43 and had no real ties, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's weird because he moved here apparently when he was like 23. But my initial thought was because usually when somebody age 43, which is my age and your age,
yeah,
when somebody does something wrong in Lansing, it's like the over/under on Facebook mutual friends is like 12 for me. I'm like, dang it. So immediately I'm like, oh my god,
I don't go on Facebook anymore, so I don't have to worry about it.
I was like, how well do I know this guy? And I was glad that we had no connection whatsoever.
Yeah, he's a douche. I'm just glad he shot himself. Junior next. Unless I missed it, why haven't we heard anything from Coach Tucker about the shootings?
I mean, I think one of the things when you have a big platform like Mel Tucker has, you want things to feel appropriate. Like, and he did yesterday, I think, put out a tweet. He was interviewed at the vigil, so he was at the vigil. And so, I think it's a tough spot where you're trying to, I mean, he understands like Izzo is the voice and face. You don't need your football coach also going up there. And
right.
So it's a tricky thing. And I think you're just trying to balance what feels right. Because this isn't about him. It's not about you. And so where is your voice needed, and when it is, trying to and
I think he did the right thing, though.
I think it was fine. Yeah,
Let Izzo
absolutely.
handle all that stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mel Tucker fan page next. Thoughts on the spy balloons, all these chemical spills, Russia, etc. Is the end of the world as we know it? Is this the end of the world as we know it?
This is the A block for our next pod, which is going to go the next 2 hours. The spy balloon thing is weird because a couple of these things now have nothing to do with foreign intelligence. It's like, weather stuff and research from Illinois,
guy named
University
Dave
of Illinois,
trying to shoot up his own satellite dish.
Yeah, they're gonna have to get better intelligence on this stuff. Kind of weird. The chemical spill stuff is scary, and the train derailments and some of the stuff that the regulations on trains, some of the track conditions, other things that's scary because you see what's happening in Ohio right now, like and the conditions of water and some of the.
I saw the track conditions in Ohio. I'm like, is that real?
It looked awful. I don't know how real all that is.
The train was shaking back. I'm like, come on, that's got to be. I just think everything's fake now. So
yeah, and the track doesn't look that bad at Michigan's Adventure when you're just going around in a little
yeah.
trolley. I mean, yeah, it's the chemical spill stuff and all these is scary stuff. Hopefully there's some. The problem is we just don't have a functional legislative body at the national level right now in a lot of places that allows you to address issues and do anything seriously.
Fart soup next. Number 1, is it bad that I'm becoming numb to these tragedies and don't expect any meaningful change? 2, with Ohio State canceling their series against the Huskies, Washington Huskies, does that mean MSU is the only non-chicken shit football team in the conference?
Well, I think Ohio State did it because they have like Texas on the schedule. They have the Ohio State schedule is legit. Like this year, they played Notre Dame. Next year, they're at Notre Dame with only 6 home games. I think it's because they know that they're going to be right away featured with like USC in a conference game, and probably headed out west. And they don't want to do two of those.
Scared
things.
Of Washington? You pay $500,000 to get out of that?
Yeah, and
I mean, dude, what?
Yeah, but I understand why they were looking to do it.
Because they're scared of Washington.
It's not bad that you're becoming numb. I mean, it's sad, but it's reality that we're all. I mean, this happened in our backyard, and I'm somewhat numb to it. Right now, I also live in a neighborhood that I've had, adjacent to my neighborhood, at least, a couple to 3 or 4 teenagers shot and killed in the last 6 months or so. There's been a big problem in Lansing with some of that stuff, and so young people with guns and without outlets and without mentors and that stuff affects me just as well. And so it does. Like, this ought to be the biggest thing for a long time, and unfortunately, it's just the next thing.
I think what I'm numb to is just knowing there's going to be no change. Like in the next 2 weeks, it'll be out of the news cycle, and we'll just keep going on about our lives.
It's frustrating.
That's what I'm numb to.
Yeah.
John Crager next. The Am County prosecutor that dropped the felony charge against the shooter needs to be held accountable. We have existing laws that were not being enforced. This was avoidable, and it pisses me off more knowing the fact. And from Alan Perlstein, a progressive prosecutor pleads down felony gun charges on McRae with our existing gun laws, and he's allowed to legally purchase a firearm, which he uses to kill people. An observation. Perhaps we ought to try to enforce our existing gun laws before trying to create new ones.
So I've read a little bit about what happened with Carol Seaman in the prosecutor's office. I don't know all the circumstances, and I think this will be something that is going to be. We're still in the stage where it's about victims. It's about what happened. It's about this was going to see some scrutiny. I can guarantee it, in the days ahead. And I understand. I've read from lawyers that this why it happened and it was pled down from a felony is came across as reasonable, but still, this ultimately this guy had a gun who shouldn't have had a gun, and there was an opportunity to maybe make it a little harder for him to have a gun, and it wasn't taken advantage of. So that deserves absolute scrutiny. And yeah, you're right. We do need to enforce our existing gun laws. We also need to change the freaking gun culture a little bit, and it shouldn't be. I mean, I get that's a big part of our country, but ultimately it's killing a lot of people. So maybe it's not such a great part of our country.
Ben Jen next. At least 71 mass shootings occurred in the U.S. this year in 46 days. Each is tragic, awful, incomprehensible, life-affecting, but that's 1.5 per day, 1.5 per state. Almost every group targeted along class, race, and religious lines.
Yeah, it's egregious. Now, the mass shootings definition is, the multiple people or whatever it is. It's not everyone is like this, but it's I mean, this is why we feel numb to it. It's just it's constant.
Still wild to think about, though.
Yeah, and it's synagogues, it's mosques, it's churches, it's schools, it's businesses, it's. Yeah, I mean,
I thought you were going to keep naming stuff.
It's
late 2 PM here.
So sorry.
Jason Akins next.
I love that you can't. It can't get so late today. The show can go long, but it can't get to our bedtimes. That's
Jason Akins. I'm filled with grief. In the past, I've been confronted by this video I posted below of Stephen Colbert talking to Anderson Cooper about coping with grief after he lost his mother. I recommend it to all my fellow Spartans during this time of sadness.
I think there are things, and you can find this under the Twitter questions from Jason Akins, or just Google the the Anderson Cooper Stephen Colbert interview. You see this with who was the guy you stole the Late Show? Craig Ferguson. I'm not going to get that name wrong and have you shouting out,
Johnny Carson.
Yeah, thanks. And when his father died, and there was he did a really good monologue about that grief and becoming. And how that changes you as a guy when you're sort of the patriarch of the family all of a sudden, and just how different that is, and when you lose that particular person. I think when you can find things that bring comfort, I think those are really helpful things. And if you spend all weekend instead of basketball watching YouTube videos that make you comfortable, that's fine.
Hans Jurgen.
Why am I telling people what's fine? People know. I mean, you fix that in post. That sounded really like preachy. Like it's fine. You do this. That's all.
I thought it fit. Hans Jurgen next. Number 1, we all thought it couldn't happen to us until it did. Let's keep shining a light on the negative effects of gun violence and force society to change. Let's not forget about this after a few weeks. 2, let's credit the police for not getting on the scene quickly.
For getting on the scene.
Wow, that's a big word to leave out. Let's credit the police for getting on the scene quickly. Let's also throw them a bone by regulating guns and providing everyone free mental health. 3, is it best to ignore the motives of these mass shooters and not release their names? Don't they do this to get their message out and feel important? And bonus, is it okay to take your trash to the curb wearing just long johns, asking for friends?
Appreciate you, Hans. I knew there was one at the end, a little more traditional Hans.
Just make sure the lower half's covered.
Yeah.
Go get your trash.
What's as you take it out? Do you take the trash to the curb, or what do you guys?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the least you've been like when you've gone out to do mail or trash? What's the least appropriate you've ever been dressed?
Tank top on or something, like
no
a basketball
pants?
jersey.
Just hanging out.
Yeah. No. I always wear pants.
Right.
I don't know. It's so quick, no one sees you anyway.
I think I have done. And I don't remember when, but I just have a bad feeling that I've done it in boxer shorts before, like really late, like 2 a.m.
Man, there's a draft in here. What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think that's the question from Hans, though, is it best to ignore the motives of these mass shooters and not release their names? You have to.
It's impossible to.
Yeah. I mean, I do think you don't want to glorify, and that's the wrong word. You want to make sure they don't feel, although they're dead, so who the fuck cares? But you don't want to make sure mentally unstable people see it as a glorifying act. And so I think that you need to be careful there. Like a lot of the stories we write, we don't mention the shooter. We don't think it's deserved. It's not where we want the focus. But at certain points, when you're writing about the shooter or about the incident, that name is going to happen, or about why or whatever. So I think you have to release names, but certainly you don't want to overdo the mentions.
Jake Hawkins up next. Number 1, as far as things being back to normal and feeling safer on MSU, whether you're from the Lansing or East Lansing area like me, an MSU student from out of town or state, a faculty member, an MSU worker, athlete, coach, first responder, etc., that is the big question of when.
When and if.
When and if.
If you're going to feel safer on campus.
All right.
Yeah.
2, my heart goes out to the 3 victims who perished way too soon, the 5 others fighting for their lives for a full recovery at some point, and everyone who witnessed and survived to try and get their lives normally. Then again, who knows if that's possible. And 3, that being said, this week has been a complete and utter shock due to the fact that Monday's shooting made national headlines and national outlets gravitated towards East Lansing and MSU to cover this. A place I've been to numerous times in my hometown's backyard and favorite college.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think like you didn't have to go to Michigan State for this to be a hit to the community. Like Michigan State is, even if you live in Lansing, you never went to college there, like it's a lot of people's teams. A lot of people have friends there.
You've been to games.
Yeah, it's just it's part of the fabric. It's part of it. I mean, it is a massive part of this community, and it's an affront on everybody. And obviously, the closer you are, though, if you're a student, it's different. If you're an alumni, it's a little bit. And if you were there and near the shooting and locked in a dorm or in one of the places where it happened in Berkey Hall or the Union, you feel it. Different levels of trauma. And I think you got to understand that everybody's trauma is different and everybody sees this stuff different. And that sometimes it happens later for people too, who don't, and you just got to recognize that in everybody and be sensitive to it and understand people are in fragile places right now.
All right. And Paul E. Show next. After Monday, this quote by William Kuchenberg keeps coming to mind. There are basically 2 types of people in the world. There are those who suffer and believe that if they don't make others suffer in turn, it makes their suffering meaningless. And there are those who believe their suffering only gains meaning if they work towards a world where no one has to suffer like that again. I hope we can do the latter and work towards a world where this type of suffering ends. I hope.
Well said, Paulie Show. We're going to wrap it there. Great stuff from all of you. And appreciate you contributing to the show and sharing where your head is, and always contributing. And we'll have lots of times for we'll have different sorts of hot takes probably on Sunday night. But this again, we always want to meet you where you are. So wherever you are, that's what this show is for. We'll be back Sunday night after the Michigan game. We'll talk some hoops. We'll talk MSU. We'll do it all. Again, Groovy Donuts. Appreciate them. Go to groovydonuts.com. Get your Punchki orders in by Sunday at midnight. We appreciate Muskox. Go to gomuskox.com. Thanks to Skymint. Thanks really to all our sponsors that make this show possible. We hope you support them and continue to. You've been great. Good show, man.
Yeah, man.
We'll be back Sunday night. Couch in the Roof.